everyone, welcome back to SPOOKYEASY. My name is Jessie, your spooky storyteller extraordinaire, back at it again to talk about more spooky stuff. Happy New Year! Thank God that demon year is finally over. Unfortunately, not much has changed. Currently, we're in lockdown here in Toronto. Hopefully, it won't last for very long. However, seeing as the numbers keep going up all the time, it's not likely. So let's keep ourselves entertained. Let's talk about some scary things. I hope you've had a lovely holiday. I know that I did. It was very restful. I got a lot of cool gifts, including my own recorder.
Ghost hunting, anyone?
Yes, this little recorder can help pick up some electronic voice phenomenon, or EVPs, on ghost hunting adventures, and I am going to take full advantage of this. So while I plan for those adventures that will be upcoming very soon, I do want to talk about more story times. Apparently they're in demand right now, according to some of my friends, where I have been kind of hinting to them more or less in my previous videos, and I thought, okay, maybe now's the time for another story time. So yes, tonight will be a story time from my own personal experiences. You can believe them or not. These are just things that I remember vividly. In any case, during the holiday season, before I get into my story time, which will be a little bit rambly, I'll admit, I had been doing a lot of self-reflection. I would say definitely been inspired by watching my true crime documentaries, just basically seeing like cause and effect, so to speak. Same thing with me rewatching all of Orange is the New Black on Netflix. That's an old series and it's great. But again, they do retell a lot of stories of the inmates in that particular story as well. And it's kind of like, again, my thought about why I see things today, and it's based to do kind of around this story time. I'll get into it, believe me. Before I get into that, I just wanted to let you know what I'll be drinking tonight, and it will be my trusted and true whiskey ginger. Yes, I've been having stomach issues lately again. Unfortunately, I got a bout of the acid again, but I'm pretty sure I know as to what is causing it now, so hopefully it will stop altogether now, if my theory is correct. So that being said, let's dive into my own personal story time. Please don't think I'm crazy. So with all that being said, please drink responsibly and cheers to you. So this story time actually takes place in Toronto, where I grew up. I was about 9 years old. As I mentioned before, we moved into a ton of different places growing up, at least 15 to 20 times. I might be exaggerating, but I don't know, because we did just move so many times. It was unreal. So we moved into this one particular house. I don't remember ever hearing anything about this area being particularly haunted. I heard about there being some paranormal activity more down the road, and actually I plan on visiting that area in a future video. But in the area that I was in, basically it was never really a place where there was like an old church, for example, or old houses or anything like that. So yes, we moved into this house. It was kind of like, I would want to say like maybe a semi-detached to townhouse. So all those houses were connected together, and basically we had a bunch of neighbors, a bunch of neighborhood kids that we made friends with. We'd go out all the time, play together, especially in the summer times, and it was just a grand old time for 9-year-old me. So I would be going around with my friends, and you know, my sister would start saying things to me. She was about 2 years older than me, and we all had our own rooms at this point, basically. My two older sisters were basically sleeping in the basement. This basement had two, like, what was converted into like two different rooms, and also kind of like a living area, and the laundry room was down there as well. The main floor was just like the living room, kitchen, dining area, all that good stuff. And then up above, I believe there were, I want to say 3 rooms. Yes, there were 3 rooms. So it was a pretty big house, actually. So as I was saying, my sister would be, you know, in her room by herself, sleeping every night as normal. So would I. I don't remember really notice anything by myself in the beginning. For those that do know me in real life, I come off as a little bit naive sometimes, I feel. So sometimes it takes me a little bit of time to grasp what's going on, and I've always been that way ever since I was a child. So that being said, I would, you know, be hanging around my friends, you know, the neighborhood friends, and my sister as well. Like, we were all mutual friends with these kids. And my sister just so casually told me, oh, you know, I started to see things in my room. Like, I've been seeing the shadow of a little girl in my room. I'm like, what are you talking about? What? It's just like that in every story, especially when I read it on Reddit, that, you know, your sister just so casually happens to mention these things. But I guess, like, we're kids, right? Like, I was 9 years old, my sister was 11 at the time, and it just kind of came out so innocently. So the neighborhood kids go, oh yes, that's where the little girl died, in the backyard. Her dad killed her. Apparently this dad was a really mean guy. They didn't have any names, by the way, to go along with this story, but all the kids knew about it and they seemed really genuine. Apparently they had been living there for a while, so they knew about all these kinds of stories in the area where this old man was really mean to his daughter and eventually killed her. And I believe they mentioned that he buried her in the backyard. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but this is just a story that they told us. So my sister's like, okay, that's a little weird, but whatever. And at this time, I haven't seen anything, heard anything, you know, nothing like that. So I just kind of just forget about it. I'm just going along on my merry way. By the way, this is the house where my parents did do the blessing in the house. I should let you know. It didn't happen right away as soon as we moved in. It happened maybe about like a week or two after, I believe. So they invited this priest over. He did the blessing real quick all around the house, saying his prayers, doing all that stuff. I actually mentioned on how to do a proper blessing, a Christian blessing in one of my previous videos. I'll leave a link down below for that. So he did this. Unfortunately, like I mentioned, we had this kind of beacon in our life that I feel really did attract a lot of negative energy. And I feel that this blessing did not work at all. I feel like if anything, it made it a lot worse. And I think more than likely, this is the reason why things kind of intensified the way they did. Because it was my sister that at first started to see these things in her room. I think a lot of the activity was present there, but then it kind of just grew worse and worse after this blessing. And when I say beacon, it doesn't necessarily mean it's like any particular like haunted item, which it can be. I think that these kind of evil beacons can be like a person or a haunted item or something like this, but unbeknownst to us, we didn't know that this dark beacon was in our life, and it was kind of making things a lot worse. I'll say that. So yes, after this blessing, we are living our best childhood lives, doing the best that we can anyway at the time. That's when, like I said, we started to experience a lot of bad things. At this time, I experienced a lot of bullying in school. So did my sister. Not only that, things were getting really rough at home. There was a lot of fighting, a lot of bickering, and it wasn't normal. It was chaotic. I'll say that. And as I mentioned, it happened right after that priest visit. But whatever. I didn't really want to pay much attention to that. I coped with it as the best as a 9-year-old kid could, and I just focused on my studies. I focused on, you know, trying to have fun. And at the time, my sister's boyfriend would come over a lot and he would make things fun as well for us. So we did the best that we could despite all the chaotic negative energy. But then it started to come to a point where things did start actually happen to me as well. And there were things that I could not ignore. For example, one of the more scarier things that I can remember that I don't really have an explanation for was for Christmas one year, we got these really cool set of lamps where you would touch them. I'm gonna see if I can try to find a picture and insert it here. But yeah, so you would touch it and it would turn on by itself or turn off by itself, or it would go into 3 different settings of brightness. Like, so it would be dim, a little bit brighter, and then the brightest. And then you touch it again, it turns off. And it would be like that in succession. And they were a pair of them. So my sister and I, look, my sister, because my room was so big, my sister would come into my room when she was like nervous or afraid of sleeping in her own room, and we would share a room for a time. So she would come in and we would, you know, plug in our lamps and, you know, go along our merry way. Except for one night, we plugged in both of the lamps and suddenly out of nowhere, the lamp started turning on and off by itself, and not just one time. It was in succession over and over and over again. Off, position, dim, medium, brightest, off. And it was both of them. I'm not making this up. And like I said, I'm a very naive person in general, and especially when I was younger, I was like, hey, that's kind of weird. Why is that happening? My sister was also kind of like more worried, I think. She just kind of looked a bit freaked out, but I'm like, why isn't it stopping? Why does it keep doing that? So I would say like for a good like minute it lasted for both of them, and then suddenly it stopped. And the crazy thing is that the whole night it was just normal, just completely normal. So it would be, you know, normal, and then in a few nights after, then it would start again by itself. And it wasn't like both lamps like the first time. It was just the one lamp, like going on and off, on and off, on and off like that. I truly don't have an explanation for that, especially because it was not only the one lamp, it was both lamps, and then later on it would be like one lamp and then the other lamp, and it would just happen every few nights, not all the time. So I couldn't really say that it was defective or there was something wrong with it, because why is it perfectly normal in some cases and other times it wasn't? I couldn't. I mean, I'm not an electrician. I don't know how things like that work, truthfully. I'm not going to lie. I'm sure that maybe there's some kind of scientific explanation, but to me, it's unexplainable to this day. So not only this would happen, I would see shadows in the room as well. I would always, in the corner of my eye, see like a shadow figure. I would turn around quickly and then it was gone. This would happen in multiple locations, not only in my room, but also in my parents' room, where my parents had a TurboGrafx 64. I believe that's what it's called, one of those old school video game consoles. And I would play it there in that room. So while I'm playing there, the Bonk's Adventure, like I would see something in the corner of my eye, it would freak me out. I'd turn around and nothing was there. I would tell my parents, I did tell my parents, I wasn't the type of person, and I still am not today, if I have something that concerns me, I bring it up right away and I tell somebody, hey, something's going on here. But of course, like as all parents do, they just think it's just your wild imagination. Oh, you're just seeing things. Oh, it's nothing. Da 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 da. You know, that kind of thing. Meanwhile, they're, you know, fighting each other all the time, fighting with my older sisters all the time, and I just, in retrospect, I do see the connection now. So that being said, speaking of my sisters, like I mentioned earlier, my sisters would sleep in the basement. Like I said, it was a furnished basement. It did have 2 rooms in it where they would share it, basically sleep in their own little areas. There was like a little area that had a couch in it. It was a nice house actually. And the laundry room was just kind of by itself. So one day, I believe this must have been in the summer because I was at home. I'm not sure if I had stayed homesick. I doubt it. I'm pretty sure that it must have been in the summer. I was kind of hanging out by myself, and basically, my mom must have been somewhere in the house. I believe she must have been upstairs, maybe putting away something or cleaning up somewhere. I'm not sure. But I was kind of like milling around the house, as one does in the middle of summer. Like, you're just a kid, you don't have nothing to do, so you're just hanging out. So that's when I start to hear something coming from the basement, and it sounds like it's my name. It sounds like someone is calling my name from the basement. The basement door was in the kitchen, so I would go to the kitchen. I guess I must have been hungry or something. I was in there, but I heard somebody calling my name, and in my mind, I was just kind of like, who could be down there? Because my sisters weren't home at the time. It was just me. And it was a male's voice. It sounded like a grown up man. The only grown up man that was living in our house at the time was my dad. And my dad has an accent. He's Hispanic. So basically he has a Spanish accent. He's not, you know, not raised here. So, and he has a very distinct voice as well. It's very booming. So instantly I'd be able to recognize who I'm speaking with. But still, there was somebody calling my name coming from the basement. I'm not sure if you remember from one of my previous videos that I have an inherent fear of stairs looking down and it being dark. This is where it comes from. And again, it's cause and effect. So I go to these stairs leading down into the basement, and I hear somebody calling my name.
Jessica.
Like this, repeatedly.
Jessica. Jessica.
I'm a 9-year-old little girl. So I'm like, okay, there's nobody there, right? It's just darkness. So I don't know how I got the bravery to do it. I turned on the light. So I'm there at the top of the stairs hearing this person. I think that's white because he doesn't have an accent. He sounds like an old man. I'll be frank. He sounds like an old man. I turn on the light. As I said, I find the bravery to turn on the light, and it continues. At this point, I'm like, somebody's pranking me. My sister's boyfriend must be downstairs. for some reason. I'm like, hello? Again, I don't know. My 9-year-old self is much braver than me being at 32. So I basically go down the stairs. I'm curious to know if it's my sister's boyfriend pranking me for some reason. He decided to come visit and didn't announce it, even though my sister wasn't there at the time, and neither was my other sister, even though they at the time they were really like hanging out like that. They had nothing in common. The only reason why my sister's boyfriend would be there was for my sister, the one that he was dating. But 9-year-old me was like, okay, you know, maybe he's downstairs. So I'm going downstairs. I'm like, you know, hearing this person call my name louder and louder and louder.
Jessica, Jessica, Jessica. Like,
pissed off. Finally, I reach down to the bottom of the stairs and I'm like, hello? You know, I look around, nobody's there, it's dark. So I'm turning on all the lights. It's like a circus down there. All the lights are turned on. It was cold, by the way. And I know basements are cold. Everyone will tell me that. Basements are just naturally cold, blah, blah, blah. But it was colder than it had ever been down there. I go to both of the rooms that are down there, looking around to see if there's anybody there. Nobody there. I look around every nook and cranny, any closet that my sister's boyfriend would hide in. Nobody's there. So the only thing that I can think of is the laundry room. The laundry room always gave me creeps, just because it just felt so, and now that I'm older in retrospect, I can recognize because it just was so negative in there. And I realized that yes, all basements are creepy, like I said, but this was just on another level. So I go into the laundry room, and again, I'm like, hello. And keep in mind, the voice has stopped. There's nobody calling my name. There's nobody there. It was like you could hear a pin drop. You could hear it, like, because it was so quiet down there and so eerily quiet as well. So I'm looking around and I'm just drawn completely to this little crawl space in the back of the laundry room where there is, you know, laundry. The laundry is there, the dryer is there, and the crawl space, like, it's kind of like boarded off a little bit. But there's still a way you can go back there, I guess, for additional storage. So I go back there and I look behind and there's nothing there. Thank God there was nothing there. But the heavy feeling was just so intense that I can vividly remember it to this day. That it just felt like oppression, just anger in that crawl space. It just felt dark. And I remember thinking that, like, I can see it in my mind's eye that it just looked dark in that crawl space. And I was just never able to get over that. I lickety split it out there as fast as my little 9-year-old legs could carry me. I think that's one of the more memorable experiences that I think I can remember. And honestly, it's giving me the heebie-jeebies just talking about it, because it's one of those memories that you kind of repress because it's something that's so unexplainable that it's like, if you allow your mind to take you back to that moment, it's like in your heart you're like, that really happened. I have no explanation for that. That's something very specific that my 9-year-old brain like couldn't conjure by itself. Like my 32-year-old brain isn't even that creative to come up with that kind of story. You know, if it were something that I somehow managed to conjure up, I think that I would have seen something, right? In this case, I didn't see anything, but I heard it clear as day. It was an old man's voice that was not my father's voice, and it was screaming at me. It was angry, and when I looked into that crawl space, I couldn't take it. I had to run. And this isn't the only auditory experience that I had while I was living in that house as well. This happened actually after my dad tried a second blessing. Yes, I didn't mention this. My dad did try to do a blessing by himself. And the reason why I know that is because I was with him at the time. There's nobody else at home. It was just me and my dad. My mom was at work. My sisters were out, I guess. And my other sister was somewhere else in the house. At the time, my dad and that sister particularly weren't getting along. So she kind of just left, you know, to do her own thing. So basically it was just me and him. And he was like, you know, Jessica, I would like for you to come with me and say some prayers. Do you want to come with me? I'm like, okay, sure. So we're going around the house. He has the Bible and he's talking, not just saying prayers, but talking like he's talking to something. So I think that truly he did experience some stuff there. He just didn't mention anything to us. But he was praying as though he was talking to something, telling it to leave. So he's going around, we're both going around, and I'm like, yeah, I get what you're talking about, because, and I feel like I need to pray as well, saying the same thing, because I've heard it, you know, and they are mad. This whatever this thing is not a happy spirit, and I feel like, yes, we should be talking to it as though we need it for it to go away. But this experience that I had happened right after that. So it's like I said, if you have a negative beacon in your life that you're not aware of and you're not focusing on fixing that issue, it's just going to make things worse if you're trying to bless your house, because it knows that you're trying to get rid of it. And you know, there are professionals that should be coming back periodically to cleanse your whole area as often as possible. That being said, one night I was in my room. At this time, my sister was sleeping in her room, and I was sleeping in my own room because my parents were like, okay, that's enough. You have your own rooms. You should be sleeping in it. So the way that my bed was positioned, it was in the corner of the room, but like, how do I explain it? It's like diagonal, parallel, I should say, to the wall. So the way that I would sleep was that I would face the wall, and I would like curl up and just sleep that way. Like I would just face the wall. That was like the most comfortable position to me at the time. That was before I experienced this. Now I don't sleep like that at all anymore. So one night I wake up, it's dark. This was during the time where I was still sleeping in the dark by myself. I wasn't afraid of the dark at the time. Now I am. See what I mean about rambling? I just ramble so much. So I'm facing the wall, and I'm, you know, asleep in the dark, and then I wake up to hear breathing behind me. And it's not regular breathing like how I would breathe like while I'm like working on something or whatever. This was intense breathing, like this. And I'm just like in the dark, waking up, like, you know, when you're kind of half asleep, half awake, you know, you wake up and you're like, oh, what is that? It must be my dream or something like that. At this time, I had never experienced sleep paralysis before, but I remember vividly, you know, kind of making myself breathe in such a way that, like, I know that I'm awake, you know, like this, like kind of like wiggling my toes and wiggling my fingers, and I knew I was awake, but I'm still facing the wall in my sleep. So it's all dark. I don't know what's behind me. It just won't stop breathing, and I'm like thinking, is this my dad snoring? And my dad when he sleeps, like, and he snores, it's like a freight train. It's super loud, and again, extremely distinct, because he has a loud booming voice. His lungs are very large, so when he speaks, it booms, and when he snores, it booms. So I can tell the difference between my dad snoring and whatever is behind me breathing, like this. And this lasts for about half an hour, easy. I'm sitting there kind of like wide awake at this point, and I'm like, what is this? What's happening right now? Like do I turn around? Like, do I tell it to go away? Like, what do I do? So at the end of all this, I just basically, I'm like, screw it. I'm just gonna turn around, and whatever's there will either terrify me, or I'll just run to my parents' room or something. Again, I'm 9 years old, and I'm much braver at that point than I am now. So I turn around, and there's nothing there. I'm in shock, because it was like it was breathing at 1 minute, and then I turn around and it was shut off like instantly. And there's light in the room as well. It's like whatever was there was keeping me in the dark, as crazy as that sounds. Because when I was looking at the wall, it was like it was nighttime. And I knew that I was awake because I wiggled my toes and I wiggled my fingers, and I was conscious. I was like breathing on like fine by myself, and it was like it was dark 1 minute. I turn around, it's completely bright, like at like 6 or 7 in the morning or something like that. So I go to my parents and I'm like, hey, just to let you know, this happened in my room. And they were like, no, it's nothing, blah blah blah, whatever, you know. In any case, at this point, at least I'm happy to say that, you know, I'm pretty sure that we were about to move from there anyway. because we did experience things after that. It's just those were the most intense stories from that house that I can, you know, vividly remember. There were always those shadows. There was always that kind of feeling that something was watching you, especially in my sister's room. I actually saw some shadows in there, definitely. They were smaller, and I'm pretty sure it did belong to that little girl. At one point, I believe I did move into that room as well, just to see what was going on, because my sister, she couldn't handle that room anymore. She was just so scared of sleeping there, and I'm just, you know, again, brave 9-year-old me, I guess, was like, okay, I'll just sleep there. You know, we'll see what happens, because I kind of want to see what's going on. And I did see moving shadows, and my mom would come into the room. She would pray, you know, from the Bible to keep us calm. I don't know that she did ever experience something in that house, but I think that more than likely, if they did, they wouldn't have told us anyway, just to keep us from being freaked out, because we were so young. In the end, we did end up moving to another house. I believe that it was a house that was less haunted. There weren't as many exciting stories in that house as there were in this house, but this house, whew, it was the full 9 yards, I should say. All the fighting, all the negative energy, the person, ghost, entity, whatever it was, shouting my name from the basement, things watching me in my sleep, I guess, you know, the electrical issues that we were having with those particular lamps. It just makes me wonder, especially with the lamps, like how close proximity were those entities in the first place? Were they always behind our backs, just kind of watching us, or what? In any case, that was my story time. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope you don't think that I'm too crazy. Once again, this is just based off my memory that I can pretty vividly remember. I'm not gonna lie. I know what I experienced, and that was something that was unreal. Like, when I hear myself say it, it makes me sound crazy, and I know it. It's just, well, I'd rather sound crazy than keep this in, because I can feel that my story time will maybe help others bring out their story time as well, which I have no problem, you know, talking about. If you want to send me an email to stories@spookyyeasy.com, I'll be more than happy to read them. So anyway, please feel free to like, share, subscribe, click the notification bell, do all that good stuff to stay tuned to all the spooky stuff. By the way, just to let you know, I'm going to be following a new schedule from now on. I will be posting my videos on Saturdays instead of Fridays, because unfortunately I do have to adult. I will be posting every other week as well. So every other Saturdays, I'll be sure to update all my, you know, socials and all of that. Please feel free to follow my new Instagram account, by the way, SPOOKYEASY. I'll leave the link down in the description below as well. I just want to share all the spooky stuff with you. Now that we're in lockdown, let's just get all freaked out. Why not? In a good way, of course. Not a bad way. Thank you so much for watching once again. I hope you have a great evening, a great new year, and ciao for now. Not sure if you remember from, see what I mean about rambling. I just ramble so much. What? So I just like, screw it, I turn around